that's part of this grant, Discovery Grant, that we've got a report on, and these are how these archives will be used in performative ways. Like, one of the first things I would think of is what Helen was talking about, having some sort of a film or a display or something.
Exhibit.
Yeah, an exhibit downstairs, that will be something that the archives will be used for. Can we have some ideas from everybody how these archives would be used?
Well, you know, it's a couple of years ago, we did, for John Coltrane's 90th birthday, we did a T-shirt that the Clef Club and Philadelphia Jazz Project that was consisted of the photograph of his paperwork as a member of the union.
That's good.
And then information on the back about what that all represented and so on, and a little drawing that we used for the show. And I was thinking then that we should do it as a whole series of as many Philadelphia musicians as we could, whose paperwork is housed here, and have that be a fundraiser for the Clef Club, which we did then.
And actually, that room downstairs used to be what was called the Jazz Shop.
It was, yeah.
And we used to sell things out of there, anything from T-shirts. But one of the things we used to do is that we would have a collection of CDs of Philadelphia jazz artists, contemporary, you know, those that are living today. Because there's no place where you can really go, you know, to get a whole collection of CDs from various Philadelphia artists. I'd love to see that renewed because it gives, you know, them more exposure.
Absolutely.
Now, Gerald, were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, one of my regrets is that I never got a chance to see Peps or the
Yes,
Showboat.
right.
What would it be like if this ended up being the house for the archive, that you had a Peps night, where you kind of recreated on some level the vibe of Peps and featured, you know, the music of some of those artists, or a Showboat night?
Right.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I was kind of thinking on the same line. I mean, some of these different artifacts, the different artists that you have, I mean, you can bring that to life with a concert celebrating that artist and tying in, you know, the archival materials and what have you. So, you know, I think there can be several components to, you know, a given night, you know, focusing on maybe a specific aspect of the collection and what have you.
Well, this is what Pew is looking for us to put in our report for this part, Discovery Grant. My big idea goes right to Diane's. Ever since I learned the story years ago and read your dissertation on the Black Union and how it was the last one to hold out in the country, it's an exciting story. I mean, it really blows you away. And I've always thought to myself, what a great movie that would be. Now I can see people saying, okay, let's find out about this so we can have a movie and star somebody, you know. I mean, the story is so terrific, and it would be such a wonderful, either a documentary or a regular film or whatever. Now, I wouldn't do that, but that's just something I'd like to see that would come out of the archives.
Well, along that line, and I think the deadline has yet to pass. Do a scribe, even right now. You can do a scribe's Precious Places.
Yeah.
Do a short doc, 8-10 minute doc on.
We've already started a conversation about this very thing. Scribe, Philly Cam.
Yeah, we went to the meeting.
I invited Louis, I've met with Louis,
Mhm.
and I invited, he was too busy to
So
come.
we started that,
Right.
slowly moving that train.
All right.
And to pick up on Gerald, in fact, I made this pitch. I wasn't invited to, or I drafted the pitch, wasn't invited to make it. But using a night, I had proposed a night at the Showboat. Using, and this is how you bring in young people, using virtual reality, augmented reality, and we could create a night at any of the legendary clubs, using the resource, the archival.
That's good,
material.
virtual reality, going to Peps, oh, that'd be neat.
And another thing would be, what if someone wrote a play using the archives and
Suzanne did that.
the Mighty Writers?
Oh, and bringing
yeah.
young
Great
people in, yes, that would be
collaboration.
great.
Well, that's what I was about to suggest. What if you had,
Like young
what if you
people.
invited local poets
Yeah.
to go into the archives and then have them write poems that you collect in a volume that you could sell? do a limited run.
And art, too. Art pieces that can be created.
Jazz
Well, you're
appreciation.
doing that
Right.
now.
Also
Right,
national
the book, right.
poetry.
Oh, so,
Yeah.
An exhibit of the illustrations in your book, I mean, that
It
could
was
be.
also national.
Right, that's what I'm saying, jazz appreciation
Right,
and
it's-
national
it's
poetry
great ideas.
are the same,
And think of all the interviews that I've collected for my dissertation that they need to be digitized, but combined with other interviews that we're doing and that are out there with videos. I know Jason himself has plenty of interviews that Jazzbridge has done. And people could actually put together all kinds of, whether plays, ensembles, some things built around particular people from the past or the present who've given these interviews. Like just one thing would be to have something on the Uptown.
Right, right. You know, I understand that Peps or the Showboat, they used to walk the bar,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
on top of the bar,
Yeah.
Yeah, walk the bar.
right? You know, so I don't know if we can walk our bar, but you know, when you talk about those.
But you can show the.
Joe
You're
Pitts
right, you can
Bar.
show them walking the bar, right?
Did
Joe
anybody
Pitts
see
Bar, that's
the
where
exhibit,
Coltrane
when
walked. Didn't it, Joe
Rowena
Pitts?
Stewart was here,
Uh-huh.
Sounds of the City?
Yes.
Where she actually
Yes.
created insides of various venues in the city, parts and, you know, so you could do Pep Show Boat, you could do the Cato Club, you know, down in South Philadelphia, wherever there were venues, Wat Zanzibar.
There's actually a couple films that have been made about Philadelphia's jazz scene, where they collected a lot of old flyers. You know, they do tell this. They tell that story. You know the film I'm talking about, right?
Stephen Barry?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the director's name?
Yes, Steve Barry.
Stephen
In fact, he
Barry.
told the story of, there it goes, my memory, on Ridge, the birdcage, and how he was, a boy, a shoe shine
Yeah.
boy, and you know the story, and that,
Whatever it is.
Charlie Parker
Yeah.
came. No, what was it? Not, it wasn't the birdcage. What was it on Ridge Avenue? Was it the birdcage?
I remember that when I was a
16th
kid.
Ridge.
And what's the film
Luna, you
called?
mean?
That's what I'm
I know.
It's Steve Barry. I'll send it to you. Steve
But it's a
Barry.
documentary.
Mhm.
Yes.
By
And you've aired
was
it.
here.
You screened it here.
Yeah, we
It's
screened
like,
it here.
Many
Oh,
times.
okay.
It is.
Perhaps,
It was the birdcage, and named
Birdcage,
after
yeah,
Charlie
birdcage.
Parker. And when he went home and he told his father that he had just shined the shoes, and that's what made him fall in love with jazz at age 9. Steve Barry.
That's great.
You know, Color Night has a film.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh,
uh, Golden
Golden
Slip?
Mile,
Yeah.
Golden Strip.
Golden Strip.
It's so funny when we talk about virtual reality. I was wondering.
Go on, love it.
I was thinking about if we could get some pictures of the architecture in this area, cause it was, I think it was Benny Golson or Sam Reed. We were driving down Broad Street and we got to Broad and South.
Mhm.
And on Broad and South where there's a restaurant, there used to be a music store. And in the music store, he used to sell drums. And he used to give lessons, but he had the drum set in the window. And the drum set in the window, the music store faced Showboat. I mean Peps. So
Was
what
the-
happens?
The music store, record store, Kenny Gamble's.
No, it was a music store. Music
the
store right on
restaurant
the
is.
corner, Broad and South.
The southwest corner he's
The
talking
south-
about.
Yeah.
No, if you have, what was on this corner? You had Peps on this corner?
Peps would be
Where
the
the Charles
northwest
School is.
corner.
Right on the corner.
Right.
Right, on the opposite,
Oh,
on
I
the
think I did
east-south corner,
Oh,
The east,
diagonal
yeah.
you mean? Okay.
diagonal, right
Okay.
across the street.
Okay.
If you look across the street, you can see the club. Right there
Uh-oh.
was the music store. And musicians used to sit who used to want to play drums, used to sit right in the window and play the drums. And then that night, they could go across the street, and musicians would go across the street right to the club and play. And so that area was a musical corner, club on one side, music store. So right now, there's a restaurant. But I was thinking how interesting it would be to see what was happening in architecture, just like Faye said, across the street, the fire shop, the fire firehouse.
The
Was
late,
it Club?
Elate.
Club Elate, yeah.
Was the Elate Ballroom and the club,
Club.
Elate was lower
Eman,
level.
Club
Oh,
Eman or
okay.
something, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember
so
seeing
part
those
of that,
gold.
if we can get some of those, recreate some of those architectural films from that period, so people can see, one of the things that I think Don always wanted to do is go to those neighborhoods where they used to have clubs, like the Birdcage up in Ridge
Right.
Avenue. But it used to be private
Birdcage.
clubs all,
Yeah, he said
there used to
it.
be
You
private
got
clubs
it.
all around
Like
South
the
Philadelphia, out
421?
West Philadelphia,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
after hour clubs. And now there are other places, so even if we wanted to go and do those concerts in those places, those architectural areas are not there, those clubs are not there.
Right.
Something else is happening in that space.
But you got a virtual map.
Right, we get a
That's what I
virtual
was
map,
The
that
image-
show what was
where
actually
those
happening in that
classes-
I've had
area.
my
In
students
my
do that.
dissertation.
Have you?
about,
Yes,
a list
Oh,
of,
that's right.
yes.
clubs
It's not on
from,
Google
like,
Maps
the
anymore,
30s
but
or
I have
40s.
a link
All
to
you
it.
have to do
You
is
had
go
them
by
yeah.
the-
make a
I had
map
them,
online,
I
like,
had them go around the
Was it
city
Wurlitzer?
and put on Google
Was
Maps.
Wurlitzer- Yeah.
um,
That was the name
Oh,
of
I-
the store?
jazz
Took
jazz
my
venues.
I'd love to see
So sometimes
that.
it was a CVS, but
That
I
was the
had
name of the
them
store?
tell the story of what.
Right.
what
Oh,
they
what's
did.
there?
that's great.
I went and surveyed Butch Ballard's archives, which is in the possession of his niece and
Yeah, a lot.
and her
Yeah.
husband. But they were trying to do, in the process of doing a documentary about him, and they took, when he was still alive and lucid and everything, they took him to Columbia Avenue, Cecil B. Moore, and they walked along filming, and he stopped at East End. I said, here, this is where, the Watt Sandovar was, and this is where the Blue Note was, and so it's Butch walking along Cecil B. Moore, stopping in front of each
Oh,
club
that's
and talking.
wonderful.
That's great.
And they have this, it's like, they sort of half finished this documentary that they
Oh,
were
God,
doing.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
jeez.
One of the things we're talking about now is kind of making some of these things come to life. The places that are no longer here. I think the interviews themselves, like they live here in one dimension, but you could have voice actors in some kind of representation, speaking some of the most interesting or controversial.
Absolutely.
Animation.
Yeah.
interviews, yeah.
Yeah.
And that'll draw people into reading the entire interviews and interacting with the archive.
Absolutely.
Great.
So like the museum uses enactors, what they call enactors. That's exactly what you're talking about. And it is a really good way to draw in, students and the public,
Well, you
Homer,
talking
wait,
about,
Homer, what were you?
I was just gonna say that, to get younger people to use it and artists of all disciplines to use the archive, a residency program or a fellow program, like some of the other libraries have, where you come in, do your research, and then develop something. And that would be beneficial for our community, for the jazz community in general.
Oh, the more scholarship we get done on this, the better it gets. It just gets richer and richer. Like Call for Papers have all kinds of consortiums and stuff like that. I wanted to ask Alfonso, right? Now, what I've been hearing from people, and I knew, since I'm a jazz singer and I have my little costumes that I used to wear back in the day, and every singer I knew, like Evelyn and whatever, they all had their costumes. It would be really kind of cool to collect some of the older costumes like that Evelyn wore in the 40s, or any of these singers, or even the men too. What did you wear on stage?
Maladein Takuma.
There you go. He'd be the curator.
He needs his own curator, yeah.
Right. It's funny you should say that, because I don't know if you've ever been to the Grand Ole Opry in Memphis. Is it
No.
That's
When did they do
Nashville.
that?
Nashville.
Oh, that's
Nashville.
one of the most interesting parts of the tour, is that they have these, these cases with all the old costumes from, the older country music, and they're very elaborate.
Right.
And with pictures from performances of the artists, and it's like fascinating. And then they have the backstage, so you can go backstage, and in the dressing rooms, they'll have pictures of the artist and, various things, that had been there, to perform and so forth. But it's a beautiful place too, by the way. It's all wood
Oh,
on the
really?
inside. But it was really interesting to see those costumes and to, see the stories, all together.
Yeah, do you have collections that would complement some of
Oh,
this?
yeah, we definitely would. I mean, I think I was going to throw out some kind of things that are happening in New York to engage a new generation. I've spoken at the MoMA, and they have some really exciting program right now that I think could work here. They're doing like salons. They pick a theme and they invite in guests. They've done themes such as modernity, nature, things thinking outside the box with how can they present art to a new generation. They've also had an abecedarium, A to Z, and they invited people, scholars, professionals, whatever, musicians from around, people in the hip hop, Black Lives Matter, and they did this A to Z, and everybody presented like a 3-minute presentation. It was like amazing. The other opportunity I think here is multidisciplinary. I think there's a lot of intersection of jazz with obviously politics, travel. We just had the Green Book, and all the jazz artists talk about the Toba. So I think there could be some exciting program around that because most people don't know what Toba means
Right.
or and it relates directly to the Green Book. And I feel like
it does.
yeah. And the other trend that's going on right now too is there's a ton of graphic novels being published. Billie Holiday, some blues musicians, and I think also that's a way to
There's a
reach young
Coltrane
people.
one too.
Yeah.
Oh, is there? Oh, okay.
And I think FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, had a call for anybody to contribute one outfit that meant something to them from a particular period. So they submitted a digital photograph of it, and they basically edited and picked what they wanted to display. And then they did an exhibition. So I call that kind of like participatory experiences for the community. So it's another way to get people. But obviously we could do a exhibition of our archival costumes.
Right.
That, date back to the 1800s.
We've been talking about that, like they have an exhibit space there at Drexel's Fashion Institute where we could do a Philly jazz
Because Trudy
fashion.
Pitts had a
You've got
dress to
material?
kill, which she used to wear.
You've got material?
Who's that?
Yeah, there's some.
Trudy Pitts.